Welcome in the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch podcast. We're doing baseball, the August 10th Major League Baseball card here on wherever you get your podcast. Straight out of Vegas was where I was podcasting recently, but we're back on the @the_Real_G Warner YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube @the_Real_G Warner, on Instagram @the_Real_G Warner, across all of your podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. You can find us Betting the Pitch. And I'm trying to get out here each night, going through the Major League Baseball card. When I'm looking at, you can hear exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm reading, and what I'm seeing from these numbers. So let's get into the Monday, August 10th card. I will give out a best bet end of show like I have been doing on previous podcasts and other networks, but we're taking this back onto our YouTube channel. We're a little bit more in control tonight. So we'll start with our first look at these numbers, by the way. So bear with me. I'm entering into my spreadsheet as I'm doing this. But we'll start with the Boston Red Sox, hottest team in baseball and maybe in history, visiting the Toronto Blue Jays, crossing the border. Total is 8 in this one, even money to under -120 to over. Sonny Gray starting for the Red Sox -166 favorite on the road in Toronto. Total is 150 plus one. The money line on the Jays plus 150. We'll get this going back, I promise. And the big question is, what are we going to get for Jameson Taillon? So he's, to me, always been an okay pitcher. It's drafted really high, had a bunch of surgeries, including, I think, getting one of his testicles removed that was cancerous. But as a strictly Major League Baseball pitcher, he's been really bad this year. Got DFA'd, I think, by the Cubs. The Blue Jays signed him because they've traded away so much starting pitching, and they're relying on Max Scherzer, who you can't trust to go more than 3 innings, it seems, and plenty of other, I guess, young type of prospects, especially with Spencer Arrighetti getting hurt. And then they traded for him, and then he's gotten hurt again on a rehab assignment. So there's not a lot of options for Toronto here. They're not playing for much, though they're not that far out of the playoffs, I got to say at this point. But the Red Sox, incredible run they've been on. You would expect them to be a pretty hefty favorite, as they have won a million games in a row, it feels like. Did lose to the A's, I think, 2 out of 3 this weekend. But ultimately, the Red Sox, cheap lines that we were seeing them a little bit while they're on their big winning streak, those went by the wayside pretty quickly. They were big favorites, a lot on the road, and certainly are here. As a home underdog player, this is tempting to me for only seeing the number and then probably a skip, because I don't really trust Jameson Taillon. I don't really trust the Jays offense, which has been their biggest problem, I think, this season, and trying to get back to the World Series. You could say injuries too, but everyone seems to have injuries. Every team does. But Sonny Gray's awesome, and I don't really want to play overs with him. Yes, he can give up some runs from time to time, but I just feel like he's so good at getting out of really sticky situations. That's not really what I want to be with if I'm playing it over. We'll move next to New York Mets and Christian Scott starting on the road to the Atlanta Braves and Bryce Elder. We got Christian Scott, a plus 134 underdog. Total is 8, plus 110 to under, using all lines quoted courtesy of betonline.sportsbetting.ag. If you don't have an account at either of those sites, let me know, and hit me up at @the_Real_G Warner across all social media platforms, and I will get you a referral code, because it's a great spot to be. They do bonuses, reloads, all these sort of things that can get you, as long as you make that first deposit. They match, I think, 100%. And then it's a good spot to be. Great lines, openers, all those sort of things, and very competitive juice, which you don't get all other places. Yes, I've been with BetOnline and been sponsoring the podcast for a long time, but it's a great spot to be, and I wouldn't say that unless I truly believed it. So the New York Mets, Christian Scott, big question about him is how long is he going to pitch in these games, because New York Mets aren't playing for anything. They sold off everything they could. They've been playing good baseball, scoring a lot of runs. They've been running into some really poorly playing teams. So was that really the Guardians' fault or the Mets, that the Mets went to Cleveland and swept them? Who knows? But honestly, from a Mets perspective, they're playing the kids. It's been going very well for them. They still have a lot of talent on that roster. They only sold or traded so much at the deadline. But plus 134 feels pretty large. Bryce Elder was really good in his last start for Atlanta. I'm not really a believer. Did go to the University of Texas. I've been following his career a little bit more closely than most pitchers or players in Major League Baseball. The problem for me is, yes, he's found some sort of fountain of youth, or at least some new strategies lately that have kind of made him start pitching better. The Atlanta Braves broadcast was in love with him and his performance in his last start. Homer's tough to really agree with those type of things, but he's been much better. Minus 148 feels really steep on Atlanta. Yes, their bullpen's better than the Mets, who are basically throwing cast-offs or failed starters like Kodai Senga out there. But at this point, to me, honestly, I don't know how the Mets close this game out either. Devin Williams has not been trustworthy for years, really, since he was in his last season in Milwaukee, and somehow they got any sort of prospect. I think they got Durbin from the Yankees for him. And then he was awful in New York, ended up moving to the other side of New York, I guess from the Bronx to Queens. And I just don't think things are very good there. We are on a under 70.5 wins total, adjusted total for the Mets. And it was looking great for a while. The Mets' recent winning streak, winning another series in Pittsburgh, are concerning for sure. But I do think that eventually the Soto injury is going to catch up to them, and they will hopefully, what was to me a really, really difficult schedule. They get to go to Atlanta, one of the best teams in baseball, and hopefully this is a series where things start going the other direction. But I got to say, plus 134 to fade Bryce Elder and to be on Christian Scott looks very interesting to me. So I'm interested there, plus 134 on the New York Mets. Let's next move the Baltimore Orioles visiting the Minnesota Twins. And this is an especially interesting matchup because the Orioles start Trevor Rogers, and they traded Dean Kramer because they were out of the playoff race. The Minnesota Twins were a worse team that were entering the year in a much different position, rebuilding, where the Orioles were trying to compete for the playoffs. And I love these type of situations, but unfortunately the market is not stupid. We have Dean Kramer, a minus 102, slight home underdog, so minus 108 coming back on the Baltimore Orioles. Total this one is 8.5, minus 115 to under. So Trevor Rogers has been living on borrowed time for a while, you could say. He's got pedigree. He almost won the Cy Young or Rookie of the Year award a couple of years ago when he pitched for the Marlins in the National League, got hurt, never really was able to find his changeup again. He's been really good results-wise for the Orioles. They're a big piece that the Orioles broadcasters were very happy that they maintained Trevor Rogers. By the way, if you're a longtime subscriber at @TheReal_G Warner across all social media platforms, the yawns are back. Unfortunately, we're recording this a little bit before midnight on August 9th, technically, but it's going to get late fast. And I got to say, the Orioles, I'm looking for them as an underdog here. I don't know that they'll get there. Plus 100, even money or better is kind of my rule for road teams if you're playing a money line. Unless I'm really in love with something or don't believe there's any sort of home field advantage. But the Twins do have that. And in baseball, it's literally a rule in the sport where you bat last and you get to match the visitor all the time. So you got to have a real edge if you're playing a road favorite. I don't see a lot of that most of the time. In this case, though, the Twins, their offense was awesome to start the year. It's been struggling lately, despite warmer temperatures in Minnesota and across America, or North America, I guess, if you're including Toronto. The Twins bullpen has gotten a lot better, but I don't think it's as good as the Orioles, who honestly lost their closer due to injury, but have found plenty of their pieces to step up. They just signed Yennier Cano to a long-term deal. So I like the Orioles a lot here. Maybe lean to under, but not a big interest in that. And yes, they took some blows on the road at Texas this weekend. Next, go to the Philadelphia Phillies and Andrew Painter on the road at Hunter Dobbins and the St. Louis Cardinals. Dobbins a minus 110 favorite. Total is 9, minus 110 each way. And that feels like a little bit of a curious number to me. Yes, Andrew Painter had some injury concerns, which certainly you want to make sure that he is pitching. And if you do listed pitchers, he does not start, then your bet would be returned to you. So if you're looking to bet the Phillies and try to grab that plus 100 even money, which I might be as I get deeper in this podcast. With that said, Painter, who is the heir apparent and really took the money or signing dollars that Ranger Suarez would have gotten for the Philadelphia Phillies, but they basically let him walk because they had this prospect. They're going with McAble or Andrew Painter, ended up trading Abel to, I want to say, Minnesota last year at the deadline to get Yohan Duran. And then basically this has been Painter's job, and he's not been able to take that spot. It's been a problem for the Phillies. They've been pitching really well this year. Their hitting has been far beyond what expectations were set. I feel like Marsh is like their best hitter based on expectations this season, but there still are big famous names at the top of the Phillies lineup. We would expect Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper to all improve, especially with Harper playing right field. Maybe that jazzes him up a little bit. But with that said, the Cardinals were expected to rebuild this year. They've been much better than expected, but I think the markets realized they're not that strong. Their lineup was overachieving, I think, for a lot of the season. Their bullpen has been good, but I don't really trust what they are going to do or how they're going to finish the season. The Phillies even money seems like a really nice price. I'm curious to see where money comes, but I would imagine the Phillies will move to a favorite before this game. First pitch is thrown at 7:45 Eastern time on Monday, August 10th. We'll now move to the Texas Rangers and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. We got Mackenzie Gore starting on the road for Texas at Reed Detmers. Currently, Gore a minus 115 favorite, plus 104 coming back on the Angels. Totals 8.5, minus 107 to under minus 113 to over. And if you hear me, and as you've heard on the What I Bet podcast and the pregame.com podcast network, if I'm looking at first five numbers, then you know I like under in that game, and I certainly do. 4.5, juice minus 121 to under. Wouldn't hate a fall to 4 here. I'm really most worried about preserving capital and pushing as opposed to winning. To save some juice, I'd rather take an under 4 than under 4.5 anyway. But Detmers has been really good for the Angels. Has been eating innings. That's very important for a bad Angels bullpen. The question is, the Angels have just played a series in Miami. They're in Baltimore before that. A long way home to get back to Orange County, and that's going to be a little bit problematic considering they've been so far away from home and they're a bad baseball team. Now, the Rangers have not been good. They were in first place, over 500, got swept by the Astros, and since everyone was so close to 500 in the AL, it put them under 500, and they were trying to trade off pieces. They tried to get Jacob deGrom to waive his no-trade clause. He declined and is staying as a Ranger, hopefully for a long time, as a Texas and Dallas Dallas resident. That's what I was going for, not a native. I almost said that, and then mine went crazy. But with that said, Mackenzie Gore is really tough to trust. His career so far has been really good with a lot of strikeouts at the beginning of the season, and then it starts falling off the table with strikeouts. He starts really starting to get hit harder, and I'm afraid we're in that same type of stretch for him. The nice part is he gets one of the worst teams in baseball in a fairly pitcher-friendly park. Yes, they've moved in or changed the rules and structures of the Big A in Anaheim, and that stadium offers more home runs, especially to right field now. But two left-handed pitchers probably means we got a lot more right-handed hitters in the lineup. That's a good thing for that park because I don't think they've moved in left field at all. And I got to say, the Angels, they've not been scoring runs with their bullpens and been kind of keeping it up. They had a very low-scoring series with the Orioles, and I was expecting one with Miami as well. A lot because the Angels are not very good and we're playing 3 time zones east of their home. But to me, the big question is, can you trust Mackenzie Gore to continue to get outs and continue to strike batters out? Because if you can't do that, then we got a lot of Rangers bullpen. They've not been as strong. They didn't buy at the trade deadline. Jacob Junis went on the IL. So there's a lot of questions about how they're going to close games. For me, I think at this point, under 8.5 is most interesting to me, but big concerns with both bullpens here. So under 4.5 for the eventual 4 will probably hit tomorrow. Does give me some, I guess, interest in that under first 5, I think is my strongest play in this game, I got to say, which is seemingly getting weaker and weaker by the second. Those of you that are live here with us, feel free to throw a comment here. I can throw anybody that's here with us. Appreciate that. And of course, make sure you hit subscribe. Apple Podcasts on the Spotify, it's called Betting the Pitch. Apple Podcasts on Spotify, it's called Betting the Pitch. On YouTube and on Instagram, it's at @the_real_G Warner is where you can look me up. So let's go back to the Rockies and the D-backs. A bunch of late games. Wow, everyone's playing on the West Coast tomorrow, it seems. So the Rockies and D-backs, we got Grant Hughes starting for the Rockies. Not going to be probably relevant to much of the podcast this season. He's on the road at Arizona. Michael Soroka coming back off the IL after a long time out. Well, he's missed multiple seasons before, so probably not long for him. But right now we have the Rockies at plus 154 underdog. Totals 8.5 in this one, minus 115 to over. We got the D-backs minus 171. Pretty big favorites, but they're off a really big week of hosting the Padres and the Dodgers. So now they get the third NL West team in the Rockies, which is going to be much lighter competition. I don't know how much I want to trust Michael Soroka in his return from the IL as a minus 171 home favorite, but I don't trust the Rockies anywhere, especially not on the road. And I don't like playing unders in Arizona where there's so much space for the ball to land. Well, next go to the Milwaukee Brewers visiting those San Diego Padres. We got Logan Henderson on the mound for the Brew Crew. He's a minus 109 favorite. Casey Mize minus 101 at home for the Padres. Total 7.5 of this one, minus 120 to under. No total yet. Or excuse me, no first 5 yet, probably because San Diego played the late game Sunday Night Baseball. So the Milwaukee Brewers, Logan Henderson, he's been really good. Changeup's awesome. Padres don't hit the ball very well. They're really a pitching first team. And Casey Mize, who they traded for from the trade at the trade deadline from Detroit Tigers, was lit up in his first start for San Diego. We were on Arizona that night. I don't know if it was all Casey Mize's fault. He got hit pretty hard, but then the bullpen did him no favors. He left a bunch of runners on, and I think they all scored. But the Brewers are a really tough offense. They put a lot of pressure on you, certainly have the low budget, but their system is working, and they have talent for days, years, all those sort of things. They didn't have to trade great players for it like the Padres have done, or at least great prospects, or paid big money for it. Padres, the future is very, very dim, I think, and I'm as opposed to being bright. So I'm concerned about that. Again, kind of to the road underdog theorem is that I want plus 100 or better, or I don't really look at road teams. I am certainly interested in the Padres as a home underdog with a great bullpen, but they did use their best on Saturday, then played Sunday Night Baseball, get to stay home, which is nice, sleep in their own beds. But the Brewers were probably in San Diego by the time the Padres finished their game on Sunday night. And the Brewers are one of the best teams in baseball, and honestly, to me, put a lot of pressure on their opponents. And I think Casey Mize is one of those guys that's had a good year this year, finally found some swing and miss, but the former number one pick in the Major League Baseball amateur draft, I just don't really believe in what I've seen from him, and he's going to have to prove it, even moving to a good pitcher's park. We'll next go to Tampa Bay Rays and Freddie Peralta, fastball Freddie on the road at the Athletics in Sacramento, with Jacob Lopez starting for the A's. Right now, Lopez is plus 136 underdog at home, totals 9.5, plus 105 to under, minus 125 to over. So Freddie Peralta, I mean, pretty tough year. You could argue that when you're brokering meetings between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor as a newcomer to the team with your contract expiring, that probably is not a great setup, but Freddie Peralta has not been the same pitcher in New York. The Rays are a great spot for him to land, can certainly find a way to fix him, if you will. First start was at Coors Field against the Rockies. Not a great place to begin, but results were not good. Now he's on the road at Sacramento, another just really unfair baseball park for pitchers, I think. Jacob Lopez is good at missing bats, but Tampa Bay is probably one of the best at making contact. I don't know the style fits Sacramento, because you really should be playing for slug there, but it worked fine in Colorado. Worked fairly well in Seattle as well, winning that series. So the big question is, when are we back in the Athletics? They had a good series themselves on the East Coast at Boston, I think winning 2 out of 3, if I'm not mistaken. But the big question is, are we backing them in that terrible bullpen behind a pretty bad pitcher against one of the best teams that doesn't really get much respect in the AL? And I don't think we're doing that. I do think, if anything, over 9.5 looks most interesting to me in that matchup. We'll next go to the Houston Astros, Hayden Wesneski on the road at the San Francisco Giants, and Blake Tidwell, Houston coming off Sunday Night Baseball. Wesneski, who had faded this week, and to me, I felt like I got screwed with Trey Savage hurting his knee in warmups before the third inning, and that just put everything in flux, to say the least. But Wesneski was okay. To me, he's been more of a contact pitcher, has missed a lot of time due to injury. But I think this is his third start of 2026, so freshly back. And he gets to face a San Francisco team that's certainly a lot weaker without Luis Arraez, who's been traded to the Philadelphia Phillies, and that team is just bad in general. Most of that, I think, comes on the defensive end, though, because the Giants have been trying to find hitting. They don't really have a lot of that, and their defense suffers. They're playing guys that just should not be on the field. But Heliot Ramos also left, so maybe San Francisco will improve in those categories. Anyway, Blake Tidwell plus 138 underdog at home to the Astros. Totals 8.5. This one minus 120 to under. Again, no first 5 total after Houston played on Sunday night. Astros bullpen should be good. Didn't use their best relievers. Used some of them, I guess. And, De Los Santos, Brian King on Saturday night. But ultimately, the Astros deserve to be a favorite in San Francisco. The problem is, I just don't know that I trust Wesneski to miss bats. The nice part is in San Francisco, where it's very hard to hit home runs. Right field basically off limits to right-handed batters. Right field to right-handed hitters. Going the opposite way, it just doesn't happen unless you're Paul Goldschmidt at his peak or prime aged years in Arizona. With that all said, I think under 8.5 is always a lean for me in San Francisco. I don't know that I trust the pitchers for it. That's an enormous total in that ballpark. Last game we're going to discuss before we get to a best bet and sign off here. Get this uploaded on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, and on Instagram for a reel, hopefully. Let's go to the Kansas City Royals and Noah Cameron on the road to the Los Angeles Dodgers and Tarek Skubal. A big-time price here. It's expected plus 269. Nice on the Kansas City Royals. Spread right now, or the money line, on the Los Angeles Dodgers, minus 305 on Tarek Skubal. Total in this is 7.5, minus 110 to under and 110 to over. First 5 as well is under 4, minus 110. So not a lot of indicators on where this number is going to move. I guess I should give out the run line too for a price of this big. And honestly, to me, this is the time to do it. For a run line player, it's for a road underdog to potentially lose a game and have it finish the ninth with only 8 at-bats from the Dodgers, which allows you to stay a single run loss, will pay you out your bet. It seems very interesting to me. We'll see if that is the end result. The big question is Noah Cameron against a team that punishes pitchers who pitch the contact. Noah Cameron has started to call his own pitches, and things have gone great for him. He basically was getting pushed out of at least the traditional starter's role for Kansas City, pitched as an opener, decided to call his own pitches, and was awesome pitching after an opener, and was great. And then his starts since have been awesome. I've been a little bit hesitant to trust him, and I am certainly hesitant on the road at Chavez Arena in Los Angeles, especially with the Dodgers not playing well. Losers of 7 straight till they won in extra innings on Saturday, and then had a final finale against Arizona on Sunday. They're back to LA though. Kansas City coming west from their series with Minnesota, I believe, at home. But no, Cameron's been really good. Tarek Skubal is going to knife through the Kansas City Royals lineup. The good part, I guess, for KC is Bobby Witt is back, and they know Tarek Skubal very well. So those are 2 benefits that can certainly help them. Numbers enormous. I just don't think Tarek Skubal is going to lose his first 2 outings. He was plenty good on the road at Chicago at Wrigley Field, but probably a game the Dodgers should have won. But if not, but for a 2-run shot to tie the game, I think with 1 strike remaining, 2 outs in the 9th inning for the Cubs. Enormous number, and I don't blame anyone taking a shot in the Royals because -305 favorites are, to me, not profitable. Certainly someone could check me on that at @thereal_Drew Warner across all social media platforms. But for me, I think look to underdog here and look for a low-scoring game potentially. That's the game the Royals need to play. They cannot compete with a high-scoring game. The problem is if Kansas City, everything goes well, they still have a bullpen that's really hard to get through. So maybe if you're looking at things, go for first 5 run lines. But I don't really love underdogs in those scenarios, I must say. +145 on +1/2. So that does it for this Monday, August 10th, Major League Baseball card on the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. We appreciate you coming back with us to YouTube. You can find us, and I'm sure most of you are going on Twitter at @thereal_G Warner and finding it there. I do want to shout out my Patreon, patreon.com/thereal_G Warner, best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups. I'm literally going to go post all this sort of stuff and my leans for tomorrow, August 10th. That'll be in a thread that you can get in there. If you download the app, turn on notifications, you get a buzz every time I lock something in if you turn on notifications. So make sure you go do that. And make sure you're getting a notification when I lock things in so you get as close to the price that I'm getting, which I think is important in this type of environment. As for a best bet, I'm going to try to get it out there on social media, on the Instagram at @thereal_G Warner, on YouTube at @thereal_G Warner. Same thing, just different formats because I know some of you like different ones. And for some reason, there's a lot more activity on Instagram for American sports betting than I expected, but trying to keep that going for sure. With that said, our best bet, and I got to say, my strategy in baseball, it's to make positive expected value bets. I truly think that most games are a coin flip, and I'm trying to find the best way to consolidate and make the juice work for us and our clients. I'm generally shooting for 50%. That's my goal in Major League Baseball. 55 or so is my goal in sports with spreads and higher and heavier juices. But to me at this point, that's, I think, the best way to conquer Major League Baseball. I'll try to do more of this. And speaking kind of my strategy on future episodes, just wanted to get an episode back out there and get more people on here. And of course, leaving 5-star reviews and any sort of social media bumps you can give are huge for building our brand and trying to get the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network out and going. We will have more NFL on this season with _Schnicker, college basketball coming back with the Need for Seeds with Big East Ben. And so plenty more going on this channel, and look forward to any tips or questions or comments or reviews that you can give. 5 stars are huge for us. If you want to give us 1, just don't leave it. But would love to interact with all of you on any social media platform at @thereal_G Warner. So for our best bet on this episode, first episode back on YouTube for the 2026 season, this is August 10th, Monday, August 10th. We'll go with that under 8.5 Texas Rangers at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, trusting Reed Detmers, hoping for Mackenzie Gore to find his form of the past. And if there's not any questions out here, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode. Betting the Pitch, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify at @thereal_G Warner on YouTube and on Instagram.